Excuse me, what exactly are you doing in this neighborhood?
I'm sorry, what? I'm just walking to my car.
Don't act dumb. This is a private community, and I know you don't belong here.
Ma'am, this is a public street. I live 3 houses down from here.
I'm calling the police. You are way too
You're
suspicious.
free to call whoever you like.
Real estate attorney Monica Jefferson thought she was just coming home from her Saturday morning yoga class. She had no idea that the next 23 minutes would completely destroy Linda Patterson's reputation, cost her a 6-figure settlement, and turn her into the most hated woman on the internet. The neighborhood CCTV camera was silently recording when Linda's true nature came pouring out like poison from a broken bottle. And when the footage hit social media 18 hours later, it wouldn't just ruin one racist woman's life. It would spark a national conversation about entitlement, privilege, and what happens when people think their skin color gives them the right to police other people's existence. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story, please hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're gonna wanna follow this channel after you see what happens when this Linda realizes she just picked a fight with the wrong person. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, because this story is gonna leave you speechless. Monica Jefferson was 39 years old and one of the most successful real estate attorneys in Atlanta. She specialized in discrimination cases, fair housing violations, and had built her career on fighting exactly the kind of prejudice she was about to experience firsthand. Monica lived in the Brookhaven Hills subdivision, an upscale neighborhood where houses started at $800,000, and many residents seemed to think their property values gave them the authority to interrogate anyone who didn't look like them. She had bought her house 4 years earlier, a beautiful colonial with a 3-car garage and a yard her 2 daughters loved playing in. On this particular Saturday morning, Monica had just finished her weekly hot yoga class at the studio downtown. She was wearing black leggings, a gray athletic tank top, and carrying her yoga mat and water bottle. Her natural hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked exactly like what she was, a successful professional woman getting some exercise on her day off. Linda Patterson lived 2 streets over from Monica, in a slightly smaller house that she'd inherited from her parents. At 57 years old, Linda had never worked outside the home, spending her days managing her husband's dental practice and what she called keeping an eye on the neighborhood. What that really meant was calling the police on black delivery drivers, questioning Hispanic landscaping crews, and generally making life miserable for anyone she deemed suspicious. Linda's racist behavior hadn't developed overnight. She had grown up in an all-white suburb where her parents regularly made disparaging comments about those people moving into good neighborhoods. Her worldview had been shaped by decades of paranoid social media posts and a social circle that reinforced her belief that she was protecting property values by policing who belonged where. In the past year alone, Linda had called the police on a black teenager delivering newspapers, a Latino family having a barbecue in the park, and an Asian woman who was lost and asking for directions. Each time, she genuinely believed she was being a good neighbor. Her husband, Dr. Richard Patterson, had grown uncomfortable with Linda's behavior, but lacked the courage to confront her directly. He didn't realize how serious the problem had become until it was too late. Linda had been watching Monica walk down Maple Street for the past 5 minutes, following her in her white Mercedes SUV at a slow crawl. In Linda's mind, a black woman walking through her neighborhood was automatically suspicious. She had built up an entire narrative. This woman was probably casing houses, looking for security weaknesses. The fact that Monica was carrying a yoga mat didn't register as evidence of innocent activity. When Monica stopped at her own car parked outside the community mailboxes, Linda saw her opportunity. She pulled up behind Monica's BMW, got out of her Mercedes, and approached with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from a lifetime of never being told no. "Excuse me, what exactly are you doing in this neighborhood?" Linda demanded, her voice loud enough that several neighbors looked out their windows. Monica turned around, surprised by the hostile tone. She had been unlocking her car and was just about to head home to spend the day with her family. "I'm sorry, what? I'm just walking to my car." Linda crossed her arms and stepped closer. "Don't act dumb. This is a private community, and I know you don't belong here." Monica felt her heart rate increase, not from fear, but from the familiar anger that came when someone questioned her right to exist in spaces she had every right to occupy. "Ma'am, this is a public street. I live 3 houses down from here." Linda's voice got louder, more threatening. "I'm calling the police. You are way too suspicious." Monica stayed calm, but her voice took on an edge. "You're free to call whoever you'd like. I'll be right here." By now, other residents had come out to see what was happening. The Johnson family had paused their Saturday morning jog to watch. 3 teenage boys on bicycles had stopped on the sidewalk. Unknown to both Linda and Monica, the neighborhood's recently installed security camera system was capturing every word and gesture in crystal clear, high definition. Linda held up her phone like a weapon. "Fine, I'm calling 911 right now to report a suspicious person in our neighborhood." Monica crossed her arms and remained calm. "Go ahead and make that call. Everyone here can witness you harassing me for walking to my own car in my own neighborhood. I have every right to call the police when I see someone who doesn't belong," Linda snapped. "And everyone here has the right to see you make a fool of yourself," Monica replied calmly. Linda began dialing, her fingers shaking slightly with rage. "I'm reporting someone who's acting suspicious, refusing to identify herself, and being confrontational." "Ma'am," Monica said, her voice taking on a professional tone, "before you make that call, you might want to think about what you're going to tell the police. What crime am I committing? What suspicious behavior have you observed? Walking to my car with a yoga mat?" Linda paused in her dialing. She realized she didn't have a good answer to those questions, but pride wouldn't let her back down now. "Put that phone away," Linda snapped. "I have every right to ask questions when I see someone who doesn't belong, and I have every right to walk on public streets without being interrogated by random strangers." Linda's mask was starting to slip. "Random strangers? I'm a homeowner here. I pay taxes here. I have a responsibility to keep this community safe." "Safe from what?" Monica asked. "From me walking to my car with a yoga mat? Safe from people who come here looking for trouble, looking for houses to break into, looking for cars to steal." There it was. Linda had just revealed exactly what she thought about Monica based on nothing but the color of her skin. Monica stared at her for a long moment. "Are you seriously suggesting that I'm here to commit crimes?" Linda doubled down, her phone still in her hand. "I'm saying I don't know who you are or why you're here, and I'm calling the police to find out." "Go ahead and call them," Monica replied firmly. "When they arrive, I'll be happy to show them my driver's license with my address 3 houses down from here. And then I'll ask them to explain to you that walking while black isn't actually a crime." Quick question for you watching. How do you think Monica should handle this situation? Let me know in the comments. Linda was getting more agitated by Monica's calm responses. In her experience, when she confronted people like this, they usually got flustered, made excuses, and left. Monica's refusal to be intimidated was throwing off her entire approach. Linda finally pressed the call button. The crowd of neighbors watched in fascination as she waited for the 911 operator to answer. The security camera continued its silent surveillance, capturing every moment of what was about to become Linda's public humiliation. 911. "What's your emergency?" came the voice through the phone speaker, loud enough for several neighbors to hear. "Yes, I need to report a suspicious person in my neighborhood," Linda said, her voice shaking slightly. "What makes this person suspicious, ma'am?" Linda looked around at the growing crowd of neighbors, many of whom were shaking their heads or looking uncomfortable. She realized she was in a hole and needed to justify her call. She doesn't live here, and she's being confrontational and refusing to leave. "Ma'am, are you on public property or private property?" "Well, it's a public street, but this is a private community." "Is the person threatening you or anyone else?" Linda looked at Monica, who was standing calmly with her yoga mat, watching the situation unfold. "No, but ma'am, if someone is on a public street and not committing a crime or making threats, we can't remove them. Is there anything else we can help you with?" The line went quiet. Linda realized that the 911 operator was essentially telling her that she was wasting their time. The neighbors were watching her make a fool of herself on what was essentially a recorded line. "Never mind," Linda said quickly, hanging up the phone. Her face was red with embarrassment and anger. "That didn't go quite like you expected, did it?" Monica said calmly. Linda was trapped between her pride and the reality that her plan had backfired spectacularly. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is a nice neighborhood full of good families, and we don't need outsiders causing problems." Monica felt the anger building but kept her voice level. "Outsiders? I own a house 3 blocks from here. I've lived in this neighborhood for 4 years. My children go to school with your neighbor's children, but you've decided I don't belong because of how I look." "That's not what this is about," Linda said, but her voice wavered. "Then what is it about? Explain to me exactly what I've done that made you think you had the right to call the police on me for walking to my car." Linda couldn't answer because the only honest answer was racial profiling, and even she wasn't quite ready to say that out loud with neighbors watching, and a security camera recording everything from above. This neighborhood has had some break-ins lately, and I was being cautious." Cautious about a woman in yoga clothes walking to her car in broad daylight with a yoga mat and a water bottle, you called 911 because you thought I was suspicious for existing while black. More neighbors had gathered now. The scene was attracting attention Linda definitely didn't want, especially after her disastrous police call and with the knowledge that the neighborhood's security system was recording everything. Fine, Linda said, her voice getting more desperate. If you really live here, prove it. Show me some ID with this address. Monica laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't have to prove anything to you. You're not a police officer. You're not a security guard. You're not even a successful 911 caller. You're just a random person who decided to harass me and then got embarrassed when the police dispatcher basically told you to mind your own business. I'm not harassing anyone. I'm trying to protect my community. From me? Specifically, what threat do I pose to your community? Linda looked around at the growing crowd of neighbors, many of whom were shaking their heads or looking uncomfortable. She realized she was in a hole and needed to get out, but pride wouldn't let her apologize. Look, if there's been some misunderstanding, there's been no misunderstanding, Monica cut her off. You saw a black woman walking down the street and decided she didn't belong here. You followed me in your car, approached me aggressively, and demanded that I justify my existence in my own neighborhood. That's not what happened, Linda protested, but everyone watching could see that it was exactly what had happened. Monica continued, her voice getting stronger. What you've done is harassment. What you've done is racial profiling. And what you've done is create a hostile environment for someone who has every right to be here. Linda tried one more time to regain control. I was just asking questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. There's everything wrong with questioning someone's right to exist in a public space based on their race. There's everything wrong with following someone in your car and confronting them like they're a criminal when they've done nothing wrong. By now, at least 20 neighbors had gathered to watch the confrontation. The teenagers were live streaming it on Instagram. Mrs. Chen was still recording steadily. Someone had called Mr. Jefferson, Monica's husband, and he was walking quickly down the street toward them. Linda saw Monica's husband approaching, a tall black man in his early 40s wearing a Georgia Tech t-shirt, and her eyes went wide. The reality of what she had done was starting to sink in. Is everything okay here? James Jefferson asked, putting his arm around his wife's shoulders. Everything's fine, honey, Monica said. This woman was just explaining to me why she thinks I don't belong in my own neighborhood. James looked at Linda with the kind of cold assessment that comes from dealing with this kind of situation too many times. Ma'am, did you just question my wife's right to walk down the street where we live? Linda's face went pale. There's been a misunderstanding. I didn't know. You didn't know what? That she lives here or that she's married to someone who looks like me? Linda couldn't answer because both truths were damning. Monica pulled out a business card from her purse and handed it to Linda. Since you're so concerned about who belongs in this neighborhood, here's my business card. I'm Monica Jefferson, and I'm a real estate attorney who specializes in fair housing discrimination cases. I've lived at 247 Maple Street for 4 years, and I've never once questioned anyone else's right to exist here. Linda stared at the business card like it was a weapon pointed at her heart. Now, Monica continued, I suggest you get in your car and go home. And next time you see someone who doesn't look like you walking down the street, maybe consider that they might actually belong here more than you think they do. Linda mumbled something that might have been an apology and hurried back to her Mercedes. But the damage was already done. The security cameras had captured everything. The neighbors had seen her true character, and Monica Jefferson had handled the situation with exactly the kind of professional grace that would make Linda look even worse when the footage went viral. As Linda drove away, Monica turned to address the crowd that had gathered. I want everyone here to understand something. What just happened isn't unusual for me. I get questioned, followed, and confronted regularly in my own neighborhood. The only difference today is that someone was recording. Mrs. Chen approached Monica with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I've been living here for 10 years and I've never seen anything like that. Thank you, Monica replied. But I guarantee you, it's been happening. You just haven't seen it before. The crowd began to disperse, but several neighbors stopped to apologize to Monica and James and to ask what they could do to make sure this kind of harassment didn't happen again. Within 6 hours, the neighborhood's CCTV footage had been requested by multiple residents and shared on social media. The Homeowners Association, initially reluctant to release the security footage, found themselves under pressure from residents who had witnessed the incident and demanded accountability. The crystal clear video captured every word of the 23-minute confrontation, including Linda's humiliating 911 call. The audio of Linda's failed police call became a separate viral moment. Social media users created memes and reaction videos to the dispatcher's professional but dismissive response, where Linda calls police became a trending hashtag alongside number racist Linda exposed. By Sunday morning, the videos had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. The hashtag number racist Linda exposed was trending on Twitter. Local news stations were calling Monica for interviews, and Linda Patterson was about to become infamous for all the wrong reasons. The community response was swift and divided. Older white residents initially tried to defend Linda's behavior, posting comments saying Linda was just being cautious. But as more neighbors shared their own stories of Linda's previous behavior, a pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. Maria Santos shared her story of Linda following her teenage son home from school, demanding to know why he was wandering around the neighborhood. David Kim posted about Linda calling the police when he was working in his own front yard. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly white woman who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, detailed multiple incidents where she had witnessed Linda harassing people of color. The younger residents were horrified by the video and began organizing community meetings to address racism in the neighborhood. They created programs focused on actual safety rather than racial profiling. Linda's attempt to protect her community had backfired spectacularly. Instead of removing a suspicious person, she had revealed herself to be exactly the kind of racist neighbor that makes communities worse, not better. The neighborhood was forced to confront uncomfortable truths about the culture of suspicion and exclusion that had been allowed to fester for years. The backlash was swift and merciless. Linda's husband's dental practice received thousands of negative reviews. Her social media accounts were flooded with comments calling her out for racism. Someone identified her Mercedes license plate from the video, and people began posting photos of her car with captions like "racist mobile." Monica, meanwhile, handled the attention with the same professional grace she had shown during the confrontation. She gave thoughtful interviews about the experience of being racially profiled in her own neighborhood. She talked about the psychological impact of constantly having to prove you belong. She specifically addressed the attempted police call, explaining how Black Americans often face the threat of police involvement for simply existing in spaces where others think they don't belong. Linda didn't just harass me, Monica said in one interview. She tried to weaponize the police against me. She called 911 because she saw a Black woman and decided that was suspicious enough to involve law enforcement. Thankfully, the dispatcher had more sense than Linda did, but that call could have escalated in ways that put my safety at risk. Do you think Linda got what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But Monica wasn't content to just let the social media attention fade away. She was a lawyer, and she knew that Linda's behavior wasn't just morally wrong, it was legally actionable. Monica understood that viral videos come and go, but systemic change requires legal accountability. She had seen too many cases where racist behavior was met with temporary outrage that eventually died down, leaving the victims without real recourse and the perpetrators free to continue their pattern of harassment. Monica's law firm, Jefferson and Associates, specialized in fair housing discrimination cases, but she had never been the victim in one of her own cases before. The experience gave her new insight into the emotional toll of racial harassment that went beyond the legal technicalities she usually dealt with. She spent the weekend after the confrontation documenting everything: timestamps from the videos, contact information for witnesses, screenshots of social media posts, and a detailed written account of not just the Saturday incident, but every previous interaction she had observed or experienced with Linda Patterson. Monica filed a formal complaint with the Brookhaven Hills Homeowners Association, alleging harassment and creation of a hostile living environment. She documented the incident thoroughly, including all the CCTV footage and witness statements from neighbors who had seen the confrontation. The Homeowners Association, led by President Jennifer Walsh, initially tried to minimize the incident. Walsh suggested that perhaps both women had misunderstood each other and that the situation could be resolved with a simple conversation. But as more residents came forward with their own stories of Linda's behavior, the association realized they were facing a much larger problem than one isolated incident. The association's legal counsel reviewed the CCTV footage and immediately advised taking the complaint seriously. They were facing potential liability for allowing a pattern of discriminatory behavior to continue unchecked. The association had fair housing obligations that extended beyond just the properties they managed to the overall community environment they fostered. After a formal investigation that included interviews with multiple residents, the Homeowners Association found that Linda had violated community standards for respectful behavior and non-discrimination. They issued her a formal censure, required her to attend sensitivity training, and placed her on a probationary status that would result in escalated consequences for any future complaints. But Monica wasn't done. She also filed a civil lawsuit against Linda for intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, and violation of her civil rights under state and federal law. The lawsuit sought damages not just for the immediate incident, but for the pattern of behavior that had made Monica feel unwelcome and unsafe in her own neighborhood. Linda tried to fight the lawsuit initially, claiming she had been protecting her neighborhood and had done nothing wrong. Her attorney watched the CCTV footage and strongly advised her to settle. The case never went to trial. Linda's insurance company, faced with clear security camera evidence of racially motivated harassment, agreed to a settlement of $125,000. As part of the settlement agreement, Linda was required to issue a public apology acknowledging that her behavior was wrong and racially motivated. She was also required to attend racial sensitivity training and complete 50 hours of community service with a civil rights organization. The settlement money wasn't about getting rich for Monica. It was about accountability and creating real change. She donated half the settlement to fair housing organizations and used the other half to establish a legal defense fund for people who couldn't afford attorneys when their housing rights were violated. Linda's life changed dramatically after the incident. Her husband's dental practice never recovered from the negative publicity. They eventually closed the practice and moved to another state. But the internet doesn't forget, and Linda's reputation followed her. Monica continued living in Brookhaven Hills, but now her neighbors knew who she was. The incident had forced uncomfortable conversations about racism and belonging that many residents had never had before. The transformation of the Brookhaven Hills community didn't happen overnight, but the Linda incident had cracked open conversations that had been avoided for years. Monthly community meetings now included discussions about inclusion and how to create a welcoming environment for all residents. The neighborhood Facebook group became a forum for residents to share resources about anti-racism education. Neighbors who had lived next to each other for years without speaking began introducing themselves. A group of younger parents organized unity walks, where families would walk through different parts of the neighborhood together, making an effort to meet residents they hadn't interacted with before. Property values in the neighborhood actually increased in the 2 years following the incident. Contrary to Linda's fears, real estate agents began marketing Brookhaven Hills as an inclusive, progressive community. Local schools used the incident as a case study in their character education programs, teaching children about treating all community members with respect. Monica used her experience to expand her legal practice, taking on more fair housing discrimination cases. She became a sought-after speaker on issues of housing discrimination and neighborhood harassment. The Monica Jefferson Fair Housing Defense Fund, established with part of her settlement money, had helped over 200 families fight housing discrimination. The fund provided legal representation for people who couldn't afford attorneys and educational resources for communities. The case became a teaching tool in law schools and civil rights organizations. Students studied how Monica had handled the situation, staying calm, documenting everything, using her legal knowledge to seek accountability. 3 years later, Monica was featured in a magazine article about successful Black professionals who had turned negative experiences into positive change. She talked about how the confrontation with Linda had strengthened her resolve to fight discrimination. "What Linda did to me wasn't unique," Monica said in the interview. "Black people, Latino people, Asian people, we all have stories about being questioned in our own neighborhoods, being followed in stores, being treated like we don't belong. The difference in my case was that I had the resources and knowledge to fight back legally." The broader lesson from Monica's experience isn't just about individual racism. It's about systemic patterns that make certain communities hostile to people of color. Linda represented something bigger than one racist individual. She represented the mindset that certain neighborhoods belong to certain types of people, and that anyone who doesn't fit that profile is automatically suspicious. But Monica's response showed a different way forward. Instead of just being angry or letting it go, she used the system to create accountability. She documented everything, built a legal case, and forced consequences for discriminatory behavior. The video of Linda harassing Monica is still online today. It serves as a reminder that racism isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a woman in a Mercedes who thinks she has the right to question other people's existence. But it also serves as an example of how to respond to racism with dignity and effective action. Monica never lost her temper, never stooped to Linda's level, and never let the harassment go unchallenged. The neighborhood mailboxes where the confrontation occurred are still there on Maple Street. Monica still gets her mail there every day. But now when neighbors see her, they wave and say hello, instead of wondering if she belongs. That change didn't happen because Linda suddenly became less racist. It happened because there were consequences for racist behavior, and everyone in the community understood that harassment wouldn't be tolerated. Linda learned that being a homeowner doesn't give you the right to police other people's existence. Monica proved that knowledge and legal action can be more powerful than anger in fighting discrimination. And millions of people learned that the next time they see someone who looks different in their neighborhood, maybe the right response isn't suspicion. Maybe it's just minding your own business. The CCTV footage from that Saturday morning became more than just a viral video. It became a lesson in accountability, a case study in discrimination, and a reminder that racist behavior has consequences. Linda thought she was protecting her community, but she was really just protecting her own prejudices. Monica actually did protect her community by making it clear that racism wouldn't be ignored or tolerated. 1 23-minute confrontation, 2 very different approaches to conflict, and a whole neighborhood that learned what accountability looks like. Thanks for watching this story all the way through. If you found this educational or inspiring, make sure you're subscribed, because there are more stories like this that need to be told. And drop a comment letting me know what you think should happen when people use their perceived authority to harass others. The mailboxes on Maple Street are still there. Monica still lives 3 houses down. But thanks to one racist Linda and one attorney who refused to be intimidated, that neighborhood will never be the same. See you in the next one.